Hey, thanks for tuning in. I'm Hawkeye, wearing my Queen shirt here, which is rather fitting for the next film. That's I'm in the top three here now of science fiction or fantasy films of 1980 that I think are at the top of my list. Of course, my cat Charlie's in here, going to be walking around everywhere. But I'm at Flash Gordon. Um, Now, I guess this is actually my second take on this. I did this yesterday. My mind was I was doing a bunch of stuff and I wasn't exactly quite prepared. And it didn't go quite as good as I wanted it to. But I think today I'm going to give it another try, um, give it a whirl. And so this is my second take on it. Not that that matters, but um, I guess I'm going to start with a story about myself and Flash Gordon. A really good friend of mine, Mike was his name. We've been buddies since we were just little kids in kindergarten. We met. But at his house downstairs, he actually had a pinball machine. And it was a Flash Gordon pinball machine. Now, now I'd never seen the movie, never read any of the comics. I still haven't to this day, but I had heard of Flash Gordon. I'd heard of him. I knew he was a hero, a big comic book character. Um, but anyways, he had the pinball machine, and it was a load of fun playing on that thing for hours in my childhood. It was great. He had the pinball machine. But later on, he came over to my house. Um, this is years later. When we got a little bit older, he had Queen's Greatest Hits, a compilation of, I think it was like 3 discs. But on one of the discs was the song to this movie. And we had both never seen it. He had the pinball machine. We loved the song. So from then on, whenever I remember going over to his place and see the pinball machine, we'd start singing in a ridiculous high voice, Flash. Um, but as I said, that was before I seen the movie. When I did see the movie, to be honest, it took a few viewings to get the tone of the film. Uh, for some reason, likely because Flash Gordon is a big influence to Star Wars. So the first couple times seeing it, I was expecting it to be like Star Wars, and it is not. The tone is completely different. It's very campy, a lot of fun, um, but a very different tone than Star Wars. And to be honest, a lot of comic book movies. This one is very campy, very much like the Batman TV show back in the 60s, um, which is interesting. I'll get to that in a moment. What the connection between the two of those are. But I was expecting Star Wars, didn't get it. When I got the tone, ever since I've thought this is a really good movie. Um, it's a cult movie. It's definitely polarizing, very much like my wife. You guys probably think every movie I like, my wife hates. That's not the case. But this one, she does hate this movie. She can't stand it. She didn't like the tone. So you're either gonna really enjoy it, maybe even love it, or you're gonna hate it. It's polarizing. It's a film like that, and even when it came out in first two theaters, some of the people that had worked on uh, were going to work on the film, for example, didn't because of the tone. So, anyways, the film was released on December the 5th, 1980. It's kind of interesting because excellent buddy of mine, Todd, that's his birthday. he would have been one when this came out, uh, but it was released on that date, December the 5th, 1980, in the States, in the United States. I think it was December 11th it was released in the United Kingdom. Distributed through North America by Universal. Now, it was directed by Mike Hodges. I don't think I've ever seen any other movies of his. He did Get Carter, which I've never seen, 1971. But he, after this film, went on to direct the very first video that was ever banned from MTV. What video was that, you ask? Why, it was Body Language by Queen, who lead into the next part. They did the main song, but also a lot of the score to the film. I wrote it down. It was Howard Blake also helped. He did like like where there's an orchestra. He wrote those parts. Most of it, from what I remember, is by Queen though. Uh, so going right into the opening scene of the film, I really enjoy it because uh, it's a wonderful setup for the film, and it's like the whole film is campy, so it's delicious within that. Uh, so you hear Ming, he's the main bad guy, Emperor Ming, played by Max, the Exorcist von Sydow. Uh, he's talking with Clytus, who was played by Peter Weingart. Interestingly, with Clytus, he wears a mask, so you don't actually see his face, but that's who plays the part. But Ming is he's an evil dude from the planet Mongo, and he's looking to play around with some planets, including Earth. He's going to play around with Earth, mess around with it before annihilation, as he says. He likes to fool around with things, and then once he bores of it, I suppose, he then destroys the planet. He's doing this to Earth, and what he's doing is he's creating horrible, bad weather. So, like hailstorms, earthquakes, tornadoes, horrible, horrible weather. Um, and then you hear the piano played by Brian May of Queen in this song. And then you also have the driving bass by John Deacon and thumping drums by Roger Taylor, leading to the final member of Queen, Freddie, doing the lead vocals, Freddie Mercury, and they get into Flash. And to me, it's amazing, horribly campy, wonderfully campy, maybe. Sorry, that would be a better way to say it. Um, Completely a wonderful marriage between that song and this movie. It works out wonderful, and as the title song is playing, you're shown the comic of Flash Gordon. I think it's a wonderful intro and great credit sequence. It's great. So, hey, it's a wonderful build up to the film. So now the screenplay to the film was done by Lorenzo Semple Jr., and he had worked on the original TV show of Batman back in the 60s. So that's the connection between the two. So he knew how to go for campy when creating or writing, not creating, but writing a comic book. I believe the original script was done by Michael Allen, who had actually was one of the writers of Enter the Dragon with Bruce Lee. Very good movie. Um, so he was, from what I know, he did the original screenplay. Now the producer of Flash Gordon was Dino De Laurentiis, and he brought in Semple to do the script. Semple had worked with him back on the remake of King Kong from 1976. So they already had a history together. And the script kind of followed exactly how Dino wanted this film to be done, or the campiness, the whole thing, which at times I think, from what I could tell, Semple didn't like certain things about it, but it was just sort of he was following the directions of Dino as to how to write this film or how it was to be written. So now the budget to the film, it looks like it was up to as high as 27 million. The budget. Now, I always thought this film was a bomb at the box office, and in my mind, and maybe to others, no, it's not. It in the United Kingdom, in the States, it made 46.5 million at the box office, so it made its money back plus some. Now, I'm not sure what the world totals were in other countries. I know they didn't make quite what they were expecting to make back, but at the same time, uh, it wasn't a bomb, but it was, it didn't pull in what they were hoping it would. Now, as I said, it was a comic, and from what I found out, it was created way back in 1934. So uh, this comic, it's like 90 years old now. So that's an old comic. It was done by Alex Raymond. Now, back in the 30s, there were serials done about Flash Gordon, and they would have been released to the theaters. And I believe I didn't really delve deep into finding out a whole lot about the serials, but I believe like they were like 15, 20 minutes long, each of them. And there might have been as many as 15 of them in total for each serial. There was three of them. They were dated 1936, 1938, and 1940, I believe. Flash Gordon in those serials was played by a man named Buster Crabbe. I love that name. But I've never seen any of those serials. They'd be interesting to watch for sure, but there was three of them, anyways, made back in the day, not long after the comic came out. So that's interesting. It may have been pretty popular right when it first came out. I assume because they were uh, making serials about that comic book. So it's interesting. Ended up being an influence, a strong influence to George Lucas and what became Star Wars. George Lucas originally wanted to make a Flash Gordon film. And from what I found, he was unable to get the rights to the film. So he, in the end, ended up writing Star Wars. So I would say, who knows what Flash Gordon would have been like if Lucas made it. I'm pretty sure it wouldn't have had the same tone as this. It wouldn't have been, as layered in comedy as this or silliness like this. It would have been a much more serious film. And from what I can take, the comic was as well. It wasn't campy. It wasn't a campy comic. So, like, I mean, perhaps if you look at the material, yeah, that's pretty campy. But, anyways, so I must say though, like, I'm pretty glad Lucas didn't get the rights to Flash Gordon because more on these films later for sure. One pretty soon. Uh, I really loved some of the Star Wars films. And in turn, I'm not saying I actually enjoyed all of them, uh, but yeah. So now, I guess I'm gonna get into a bit of the story as well as the actors and their performances next. So, as I said, Ming, he's messing around with planet Earth. At the same time, Flash Gordon, played by Sam J. Jones, He is a superstar quarterback for the New York Jets. He jumps aboard a plane with a woman he doesn't know, Dale Arden, played by Melody Anderson. They get to know each other on the plane. He did notice her, and they talk about that at I believe it was a hotel they were at, I think. Um, but anyways, they're up in a plane, and this all happens. So of course, being the hero that he is, Flash has to take control of the plane and fly it. He's been taught how to fly, but his training lessons hadn't got to landing quite yet. So anyways, he must land the plane and crash lands it into where a Dr. Hans Zarkov, played by Topile, uh, he's a good performance. It's got a bit of energy to it, but he's aware of things that are going on Earth, and believes they are caused from something outside of Earth, and others are laughing at him and thinking he's crazy and all that. But anyways, so the three of them then meet, and he forces them to go into a spaceship that he has so that they can go into space and battle the forces that are causing the havoc of Earth. And well, they then end up on planet Mongo and meet Emperor Ming. And there you have it. That's a really not a very good, but very short synopsis, the beginning of the film and the setup for the rest of the film. And yeah, wow, that's, yeah, most times I would just, should leave you shaking your head, like a story that works like that, but it it goes through it very quickly and sets you up for the rest of the film of on Planet Mongo. And I must say, uh, at this point now, where you're finally introduced to Ming, you actually can see him in all his glory. I really enjoy this intro, and it may be certainly one of my favorite scenes in the film because of the introduction of Ming and Clytus. But then you're also introduced to Prince Baron, who's played by Timothy Dalton. Great performance, just like Ming and Clytus. Great performance. He's from the. It's interesting because Mongo has like these. I'm gonna get this wrong. I apologize to any like Flash Gordon fanatics out there or those that know better than I. But it's like sections of the planet, and he's like a, a well, he's a prince of that section. It's called Arborea, but all of these sections are like floating islands in the sky. So it's kind of interesting. Um, but uh, what's also kind of interesting is Arborea is almost like Endor. It's very lush and green and almost like where the Ewoks live. But he is like Robin Hood and the other and those that are with him, they're like the merry men. So it's very much like that. And there's also Prince Voltan, um, played by Brian Blessed. Great performance, good, great, high energy, and you notice him whenever he's in the scene. Your eyes are like transfixed by his performance, but also by his absolutely ridiculous costume. And I will talk about more about the costumes, but yeah, great performance by him. Um, and he is the prince of the Hawkmen, and they all have wings on them, and all the actors supposedly with these gigantic wings on them. When they were taking breaks, they couldn't sit down because the wings would actually jab into their backs. So they would lay down on their bellies to rest their legs and that. Trying to get. But he was the prince of Sky City, uh, and that is Prince Voltan. Uh, so yeah, you're introduced to all of these characters, and with Dalton and Blessed, you come to realize that hey, these guys may be adversaries for Flash. They don't like Ming at all, but they need to, uh, you know, be under him. Ming has total control of this world, and they need to uh, be under him. They don't know how to work together, and that takes Flash to show all these guys how to do that. And that's kind of cool. That kind of is the tensions, you could say, that happen throughout the film is, hey, getting all these people, all these different people together and learn how to work as a team to get rid of what you both don't want, what nobody wants. So it's interesting, and you kind of get all that right in that introductory scene, and so that's pretty good. The effects to the film uh, are really good. Um, I will put after the video who worked on the effects. I apologize because I'm not sure who did it at this time, but they're really good, but they're very unlike Star Wars at the same time. They're super cheeseball, very corny, but at the same time very bright and very. Um, there's one scene where a spaceship is going through like clouds and watching that, I'm thinking I wouldn't have done it that way or expected it that way, but it's just implanted on my mind of like that's a very cool look. It's very bright. The colors of the film. Now, I'll show you this in a sec. Because I have a Blu-ray version of the film, and that certainly helps big time. But the colors are very bright and very much the color that they're supposed to be. The reds are very red, very bright. The greens, like of um, where Prince Baron's from, is very green. Uh, yeah, the yellows are bright and shimmering and very just right in your eye. So it's really good with that. Now I'll show you the Blu-ray version that I have of Flash Gordon right here. Uh, I'm really glad I have this. But it's got extras, like there's one where they talk to artist Alex Ross, who I believe did the cover right there. This is not the original theatrical poster that was done, but I like that. It's cool. It's just matches the film. They talk to him. He's like, this is like his favorite movie of all time. And there's also a behind the scenes of the film, and they talk to like the writer Semple about how the film was written and brought together and everything. It's quite interesting. Um, there's also I haven't watched it yet, but there's also the first episode of the very first Flash Gordon serial is on here from 1936. So and there's more on here as well. So it's whoa, it's pretty good. So, but anyways, the costumes. I'll get to that now. I'm gonna take a little drink here. But the costumes in this film, they are zany, crazy, like it's like completely eye-catching, but also like not what you would expect. You know, they they're also like as I wrote down here, uh, they're very shiny, like things, and there's also the sets as well. The things are very shiny and very sparkly, and everything is like stimulating the eyes. Everything in this film, so it's really well done, and it was done as well as the sets by a man named Danilo Donati. who was Italian, and he does a really good job. Big thumbs up to him. So now, as well, to some, they may enjoy the number of costume changes that are done in this film by Melody Anderson as Dale Arden, as well as Ornella Moody as the daughter of Ming. It seems like every 15 minutes they're in another costume, and it's quite hilarious. Like they just keep changing costumes every 15, 20 minutes. So, but like each one of them is a little different or very different than the previous. So there's a lot of costumes in this film that Donati worked on and created. So, but I will now go into the acting of this film, and I must say it is a mixed bag. I will start with the bad. I'll go bad, okay, good, and great. Um, and the bad is unfortunately Flash himself, played by Sam J. Jones. Uh, I read and I even heard like it was Dino De Laurentiis's mother-in-law saw him on an episode of The Dating Game and said, "There's Flash," or she really wanted him to be Flash. She thought he had the look of Flash. And I don't deny that, but his acting is not very good here. He was even dubbed by a Peter Marinker. Uh, what happened is Jones got in a feud with Dino uh, and left the picture. The principal photography had not been completed yet, but he left. And Dino said, "Well, we're going to make this." And the dialogue was then dubbed over, and his voice seems like higher than it should be. It seems like his voice should be a deeper, like a couple registers deeper or something. So it's off-putting, but it works in this film because it's a campy film. But his performance, yeah, it's not good, unfortunately. Now, when watching this film and right at that time, I was thinking, who could they have chosen? Who would be better as Flash? Because to me, if you had a great performance from Flash, it may have turned this film not around because I still enjoy the film, but it would have amped it up even further for me to say that, hey, maybe this is a great film. Uh, and the guy that came to mind for me was Kurt Russell. I thought he would understand the tone. He could do it. He could nail this. In my mind, almost like Big Trouble in Little China, kind of like that. I thought, yeah, he could do that totally. Then I found they actually asked him if he would be Flash Gordon, and he said no. He thought there wasn't enough character in Flash, and I don't deny that because his character is not really wonderfully written. Uh, it's more the other people or the people of Mongol. They are the ones that have the characters. So there wasn't enough for him to grab onto, unfortunately. But he did go on to make Escape from New York with John Carpenter, and to some, that's a total gem. So maybe it's okay that he didn't make Flash, but he would have been the guy that I would have wanted in that role, I think. So now, Melody Anderson, she's okay. She she gets the tone, I think, but I don't know. She's okay. She doesn't hurt the film really, but I don't know. She's okay. And then Topal, he's good. He's got the energy. He's totally got the look. Um, which I must say, all the characters have the look in this film. But he's good as Dr. Zarkov, um, as well as I might put her in the great column is Muti as Ming's daughter. She, like this film, is just dripping with sexuality. Um, she wants Flash, but she's also had or having a relationship with Prince Baron. You also find other characters along the way she's had relationships with too. So, um, and in saying that, when this film was originally released, it was PG. Maybe if it was released today, it might be PG-13 due to that. Um, but there's tons of kids that saw this. But there's a lot of sexuality on in this film, for sure. A lot more than one film I've been talking about, Star Wars. Way more than that. Um, and as I've said a number of times, it's campy, so you know, it's there, as well as I said, Voncido, Dalton, Blessed, and Weingard. They're all great, just great in their performances, um, and it's great because like to me, Dalton is playing this like he's in like a Shakespearean play. I love that. It's just he's playing it so seriously. Meanwhile, this is not a serious film at all. So it's great. It's just like opposite. So it's great. Um, Now, Clytus, the character of Clytus, was not actually in the original comic. He was written completely for this film. So it was a brand new character, and I like it. I like that character, and I think that's pretty cool. So now, one thing I would suggest to you is don't tell Ming I actually cried watching Somewhere in Time. Please don't tell him. He'll just know my weakness, and I don't want him to know that. So I would appreciate that if you didn't tell him. Now, at the end of the film, they have the end. It's the end of the film. It says the end, but then there's a big warp, boing, big question mark. Well, there was no sequel to this film. That was it. This was the film. They were wanting to have a sequel, but Jones had left, and as well, they didn't. I don't think there's no way they got the box office return they were expecting, so there was no sequel made. But right at the end, a hand reaches down and grabs the ring of Ming. Ring of Ming. That rhymes. And originally I was thinking, oh, that's Ming himself. No, it was actually Clytus, who was killed earlier in the film when Flash throws him on a ring that with spikes in it that he and Prince Baron were fighting to the death on, and uh, he throws Clytus on there and he dies. But they were going to bring Clytus back, so I was thinking just in my head, well, is Clytus grabbing that ring to then give it to Ming, or is Clytus grabbing that ring to put it on his very own hand and take that position that Ming had? I know Ming would be coming back for the sequel big time, but I just wonder if Clytus, if they would go that way um, as well. So uh, De Laurentiis had asked Sergio Leone if he would direct this film, and I find that interesting. To me, Sergio Leone is one of the greatest filmmakers of all time. I must say, I don't think I've seen every single one of his westerns, but um, he's made the greatest Western of all time, in my opinion. That was Once Upon a Time in the West. Uh, some would say no, it was Good, Bad, and the Ugly, which he also did. But he made some terrific, absolutely amazing westerns and went on to inspire the likes of such as Quentin Tarantino. But he's not the only one. There are other great directors that he influenced with his look, style, everything like that. But he was asked to direct this film, and he said no. He didn't like the tone of the film. It would have been very interesting to see what would have come if Leone actually did direct this film. I can guarantee you it would have been a totally different film. Ming's costume, as well, I read, was weighed 70 pounds. So Von Sydow could only wear it for minutes at a time, and then would have to take it off because it weighed so much. So, but Brian Blessed said this was one of the favorite films of Queen Elizabeth II. She would watch this with her grandchildren every Christmas. So that's interesting. And at the same time, Queen does the soundtrack, so it's like, oh, well, of course she loves it, you know. But now the character of Flash Gordon shows up as well in Seth MacFarlane's 1919. Try that again. Seth MacFarlane's 2012 comedy Ted, and his sequel Ted 2. So thought I'd mention that too. And in the original comic, Flash was not a football player. He actually played polo. Now, I must say, for the film, I thought that was a good idea to change the sport of what Flash plays. And football, I thought, was a perfect sport. It's extremely popular, um, especially in the States. And you could be drawn to it a lot easier, I think, than polo. Um, I think there's a lot more people that would be drawn to football than polo. So I thought that was a good choice by them to change that. Now, finally, there was a parody done back in 1974 called Flesh Gordon. It was a sex comedy. Um, I've actually seen it a few times. It's probably been 15 years or longer since I've seen it, maybe 20. Uh, but yeah, it was bad. It might be so bad it's good or worth seeing again or whatever, but uh, it wouldn't be for everybody. But anyways, there was a parody of Flash Gordon, and it had a sequel in 1990, I think, called Flash Gordon Meets the Cosmic Cheerleaders. But anyways, um, yeah, that's my number three of films 1980 science fiction that I think are the best. So yeah, really enjoyed watching this one again, and I can't wait to review and bring it to you my next film. And the top two films I'm going to do, I must say I love. I think they're great, and they're very nostalgic for me as well, and that plays a big part to me. Something that I grew up watching. So, but anyways, thanks for watching. This is Hawkeye, and yeah, once again, I can't wait to bring for you my next review. Until then, have a wonderful day.